Okay, so hello again. I'm going to play some Cutlass here. I got a few things that have changed. I'm no longer using Epic Table. I am investigating Roll20. Looks pretty good. I thank the developers of it for making this system. Let's just get back to the basics here. Crimson Cutlass. A new day. Well, I'm on my boat here. I'm close to Saxony, and that boat is going to eventually be destroyed. We may even turn it into a fire ship ourselves. As you can see, I'm sloppy in my procedures here, but we can correct a lot in edits. Has to card flip here to make sure we can see it. And that was a magician card. I will shuffle the deck. In fact, we'll shuffle it twice because we're nice. And we're going to start in phase B with Henri. From Fraternitas Dogma. The social order was static for 1,000 years. Then, in just a few Easter passings, God was no longer worshipped. The people were being told to revere his proxy on earth, the priests. Statues of saints were erected and donations regularly collected, all very pagan. These offerings were paid to whom? The priests, of course. Families starved while the clergy warned that the land and food was never theirs, was not even God's. Everything belonged to the nobles, or Mother Church. I watched the French side of the river expecting attack. I trained the men to fire from the gun platform and then to rotate the craft. 2 barrages could be quickly discharged. Then there was some lag to reload, and eventually the men would get dizzy. On the German side of the river, the crops were being planted. On the French side, the fields lay fallow. The peasants gave up, moved to the cities. Why plant only to lose the crop to the next group of pillagers, whether they be foreign invaders, religious mercenaries, or the king's own horse guards? It would not be long before the German side was raided come fall. Then what? War? More potential money for me, I guess. My company of musketeers was starting to take shape. I am approaching the border of the Confederation of Bavaria and Henri. Do I have an Henri? I sure do have an Henri. And I also can grab a writing pen if I needed to, and I can draw right on this like I did before. And I am close to level 3. I have 1 make roll remaining. That's keeping me alive at the moment. And I'm also going to count Ushnik as a soak-off. Now, that may be just a little bit of a cheat. Now, normally for a player character who is captain, I could be social position of 3 at the moment, but of a ship, and it's really Adam Adam's ship. But it's a badly beaten ship. I think the masts were knocked. One of the masts was knocked off of it. If I can get my company in good standing, 100 musketeers, I could be social position 4 with that. That would be a little bit better. But at my level, at level 2 and social position at 2, I probably don't deserve a soak-off. But I'm going to add Ushnik as a soak-off. Now, what do I mean by a soak-off? A soak-off is, just an old term for someone who's going to die in your stead. So if I ever take that double wound, because I am wounded, the first time I take that wound, I'm going to go ahead and if I can, use my make roll to avoid it. But if that doesn't, if I don't have an opportunity to do that, for instance, if I flip another world while doing ship-to-ship battle and just get a take blow card, I will instead use Ushnik as someone who will sacrifice himself either by fate or by plot armor. I will have that little advantage simply so I can continue telling the tale. I'm engrossed by the tale, and there's no reason to punish a player character except for the fact that you have to have danger in the game, or you're really not playing a role-play game. If there's no spontaneity that could result in death. In the omnibus, there is a death of character digression, and let me scroll through this. Again, we can clear it up in post, or you can just watch me scrolling. Watching people scrolling is tight. I'm on the old world map. I'm close to Saxony. I'm in phase B, and I'm going to just flip the first card of the game. And I have flipped a king. Now, king, that's a nice card. It's also a king straight up. That's going to be someone's going to help me out here. Now, should it be Adam Adam? Should it be Ushnik himself? Would probably not rise to the level of a king. Would he? Let me use the omnibus here. And let me go into King Flips under Encounters, Book 2 Encounters, and I can go down to Kings. Now it says that a king represents an important figure of the world or area. These are powerful NPCs that already exist in the campaign. And this was a king of coins, so it should be someone Guildsmasters. Obviously. Okay, let's go back to our plot points here. This king would represent Descopus. Descopus has appeared right here with this king flip, and now the wool is off the boat. The woman introduced herself as Hanna Karlschultz. I wondered if that was 2 or 3 names. The German accent on her French was a tough steak to chew. Ushnik took her aboard at the port of Saxony. He quickly disappeared and started issuing orders to the seamen. I had no time for this. Josephine was still to be found. The woman was dressed in wool-dyed olive, fringed in lace, and she conspicuously carried a dagger. I was almost certain she was not a trollop. Her raiment would require a maid to shoulder and remove. She was extraordinarily rich and well guarded, not just by Ushnik, who occasionally glanced over to ensure we were playing nice. Descopus wool moved to shore. Karlschultz was the owner. I was glad to be rid of the barrels. The Belle would navigate more smoothly, minus the weight. The woman nodded. I scowled. She commented, "You have many scars." Was that an observation or a question? I wanted her off-put, test her exposure to the vulgar. We once had aboard a myopic sea dog named Lee, trapped a French lass in a tree. She jeered, "Move your whopper to J.V. Jones' locker. That's a moss-covered knothole, not me." She gave no reaction except to ask, "Do you fancy literature?" I scowled. We watched the crew struggle. The Marines started helping, very egalitarian. Karlschultz chatted on worldly issues, courts and politics, other lands. I daydreamed of the open sea. The woman paid a coin to every man who labored as the work was done. Her own retainers would soon take over the task. She hid her still full purse away. I frowned. Too many free coins led to gambling and fights. You have a problem with a woman handling her own money? No, my mother is a woman who handles her own money. She's a prostitute. I winked. That brought her to smile. So that whole conflict I was having with Ushnik's sailors, although Ushnik is now a loyalist to me, but Ushnik's sailors and the whole Descopus wool subplot can go away as we hit Saxony. That's a good card. Now, can I check an ignoble from that? I most certainly can check an ignoble for that. So let me go over to my character sheet here with Henri, and I will check sea voyages, training, and maritime management. I have gotten the Descopus wool off the ship, and the Marines are probably a lot happier by that. How about if I give myself another 2-die-8 Marines? Do you remember I'm 27 to 21 on the count of the loyalty? Not that I like the bean counting of the game, but, you know, it's sometimes fun. And 14 is wonderful. So they are down to only 7 loyalists. I should say 7 people plotting with Adam Adam and Lord High Mayor Flambeau. And the Archbishop maybe even have some spies aboard. And another 14 come over to me, probably with Ushnik's help as well. So 41 to 7, that ship is basically mine. Karlschultz handed me a printed pamphlet on the rules of common decency, the text in German and Latin. This was no schedule of manners. The manifesto exploded with commentary on common law rights, a growing fraternity of artisans, and the lauding of demonstrated merit over birthright. Did I aspire to the wrong goal, expecting to be Baron Leo's son? She was pleasant company. We shared a silver flask of brandy. Were you surprised by my sex? I wonder if I'd slept through a tryst and eyed her confused. Hannah's mother joined the Masons long before forcing her father to accept the charter. Was she confiding too much? She listed 3 daughters as distant agents of Descopus. She conspicuously fingered a ruby hung by a chain about her neck. In that she judged my greed. Ostentatious pearls, too, she wore. The jewelry was immodest, yet merely a trifle plucked from the coffers of her accumulated wealth. Each time we met, she had on different pieces, all for effect. Her remark on her daughters made me think of the Lady Jade. She could have been instructed by her own father, entreated to enrich her family. She seemed a fine spy for one cause or another. Now the betrothed of the Lord High Mayor Flambeau, her intrigues would shrink almost to the mundane once she was ensnared with the feminine cadre of the royal court. Karlschultz pointed out sections of the booklet that I might find amusing. Some of the graphics were of Greek statues, the quoted words of playwrights. I was not that cultured. What was with these radicals that they used me as a book depository? First Johann Hugo, the reformist playwright who gave me the Psalms, and now good wife Carl Schultz and her Masonic Order. I handed her back her book. She told me to keep it. A thought occurred. Was I to be a Freemason? I was certainly content being just a day laborer of ignoble deeds. I figured I would pawn my copy of the Fraternitas Dogma with the first book chandler I espied. But the more I read, the more I found myself conspiring with the pages. We know from the card flips of the mission generation that we're going to have to lose this ship sometime. I have no affinity, no affection for this vessel, the Belle. It's moved me a great deal of this voyage here. Most of it injured, but so I have approached Saxony, and I'm going to flip my next card here. And we're going to dump that on the table. And try to... If I erase all the lines, I clear the drawings here, clear, it counts cards as drawing. And of course, we're going through the reformed path here. We're at F. So I can either end up going to an inquisition back to a persecution of the anti-Baptists, or onto, from here, J, a church official controls. That would be Richelieu. And that all makes sense. A rainstorm made upstream travel impossible. We moored on the bank and tied off the artillery barge. Wet powder, we were vulnerable. Still, the river made a proper moat. While the rain poured, I ordered all the gun ports on the Belle nailed shut. Apply ample pitch, seal them tight, don't mind the drips. If we crossed rapids and the ship listed, we stood a better chance of staying afloat. Keep an open barrel of pitch ready and some brushes. I want no leaks. I also changed out the stone ballast for wood and hay bales. By now, no one was questioning my orders. The crew regarded me with fear or reverence. God, it'd be great if I just pulled this out. It would be the Hangman card again. But, no, Empress. Let's reshuffle. So let's go back to this one. How about an Ace of Cups? Now, an Ace of Cups followed by an Ace of Cups. We always have an Ace of Cups as our default. We're in Phase B, so the Ace is not in Phase. This is going to be a campaign event of some sort. Double Ace. I'm going to look at my campaign events. It's always nice to add campaign events on the fly. It can build out a little bit from what we had as our initial conflicts and building some extra ones. Special encounters, 44. Why don't we use the table of contents? Double Ace. Double Ace are monarchs, quarrels, marriages, deaths, births, pretenders, meetings, and appointments. Probably, again, appointments. We're pushing even more on, do we make the commitment right now? Yes, we will. We're going to go back to the reform path here, and we're going to officially push this thing down to J. Richelieu has the favor of the king and is controlling the courts. Back at this point, Ace card. If there was any doubt that every village had a church, that wonder was allayed. Every bell was ringing. Some of the crew debated which holy day was being celebrated. Ushnik pointed out that the bells were only being rung on the French side. Richelieu was king in all but title. His Royal Highness Alexander was a hypochondriac and dallier. He was happy to let his new chancellor run the court, the judgeships, the constabulary. Heresy became everything Richelieu thought was gauche. The wearing of strung pearls by maids was outlawed. Handbills announced each change in policy. A parade of horsed heralds over the next week sang to us from the French shore, rejoicing each change. Each proclamation seemed peddled as important reform. The peasants seemed to starve with invigorated piety. I noticed a shift in wagon travel from France toward Bavaria. Most for now were immigrants that were returning to native soil. Some would soon be French, as expatriates. Most resigned themselves that Montpellier was simply doomed. I'm going to flip my next card of the game as I go into Saxony, and we have the fact that Richelieu is now officially in the courts. Here's my next card. In Phase B, it's a page, or as we would say, it is a... Yeah, we got a knave. What is a knave? A knave is going to be some sort of conflict or battle. My scout came back early from patrol and reported he'd seen a column of horse guard. The baggage train was 20 wagons, and they had retainers. Did they expect a siege? Would they dare cross over to Germany and attack from both sides? We could no longer outdistance them. The roads were drier and the horses had the advantage. If we shifted, returned downstream, maybe, raced back to the sanctuary of Saxony. Abandon the ship altogether? Hardly. Anything we did seemed to lessen our chances. The best action was to meet them here on the river, defending the ships. There was no sight of enemy cannon, brave fools. If it was to be a siege, we had them at range. We had a fair bit of powder stored. The Belle, though, was still missing a mast. I told Ushnik to move to the barge. He started to question, then bit his lip. He would trust me. I would keep a skeleton crew on the Belle while he defended the well-armed barge. I would stay aboard and man the swivel guns on the rail, moving to each in rotation, aiming and firing. Maybe a trainee could reload. The carnage we could inflict was severe. Trust in that. I stuffed a wine bottle in each barrel. And I'm going to give myself a boarding wave assault, with each character obtaining his own result. Afterward, I can loot for 250 tons of D8 doubloons. Not bad. Unfortunately, the loot is easily recognized, marked, or branded. It could be more of the Daskopus wool. It could be the fact that I'm stealing horses that are branded with the king. So I assume I'm being attacked from the shore. Because I flipped 2 knaves so far, that's going to... now, I can either ignore these knaves or treat them as negative modifiers to the final mission. And I've been actually resolving each knave as it comes along. So I'm going to go ahead and resolve this one as well. But we're going to go ahead and fight an assault wave. I'm going to take a assault wave card. 1 card for myself. King of Swords. And put that King of Swords right on here. Now I go back to my assault wave. I got myself a king. Now, is it a Bane? It's not inverted. Ooh. This is one of the problems with the deck of January made this deck myself. I actually have to make a roll to determine whether or not... Is it high? 4. It's low. So this card would actually be inverted. And go back to my omnibus here. Is there an Assault Wave Bane? There most certainly is. King Bane. Rescue a companion you believe to about to be swallowed up by the deck fray. Well, that would be Ushnik. I'm going to save Ushnik. So let's preface this whole thing. We are on our ship. We still have our gun platform, and we probably will use the barge towing either as a decoy or as our actual guns. But we have gotten rid of the Daskopus wool. And without that extra weight aboard, our draft is a lot better, so we can navigate the river. So we can keep even some of our better guns, or not better guns, some of our anti-personnel guns, the little tinier guns, on the Belle, while we keep the larger guns, the shelling guns, on the platform. And we have been attacked at night by the cavalry officers. Maybe we were heading through an area that was just a little bit of a shallows where they were blocking the ford. Maybe they decided that they could take barges themselves and come over, but the result was the fact that I needed to rescue Ushnik, a companion you believe is about to be swallowed up by the deck fray. Fail, and the highest level player character must retreat to an inconsequential position. He will not influence the action until the assault ends. Now, I told myself that I'm only going to take 1 card, and I have to each obtain my own result. I think I have to obtain my own result of... Let me look at it like this right here. Success to break the enemy morale on the assault. All right. So this card will not be the last card I receive. This card will be whether or not Ushnik's soak-off will be able to affect me or not. Heroic swordplay, 2 dice for a 7. 2 dice for a 7. I should be able to make that. Let's see. Do I have let's make sure we look at our character sheet here. And our character sheet is going to be 2 dice for a 7. And I do not have Heroic Swordplay. And it is Heroic Swordplay. I can pick it up on a roll of a 7. Can we roll it right here? We sure will. Did it show up? 2 dice. And I rolled a 6. That stinks. Oh well. Okay. Yep, it was a 6. I rolled twice just to make sure my dice were rolling properly. Hopefully you're seeing that over here. And I rolled a 6. I have missed I've missed, so I don't have my soak off from Ushnik. Regardless, all assault difficulties increased by 1. Well, that's not good. Ushnik managed to dive overboard. He would play no further part in this affair. I was glad to see him safe, with most of my Marines as well, fleeing to the woods on the Bavarian side. The water was cold. He'd later complain of a frozen sack. The barge was lost. The enemy were too many. The river became a spectacle of bloody, drowned bodies, most of them uniformed horseguards. 6 companies of soldiers were assigned. At least 2 were shattered. They charged right to the bank and beyond, a swarm that refused to be swatted by cannon shots. Still, other irregulars rode wagons right into the river and muscled their way across with grapnel and exhaustive effort. I admired the courage and the carnage. I lost my best guns, but they proved useless to the enemy. I had the oxen set, with the wrap of tow cables around the trees. The animals kept the barge taut. The gunboat would not rotate a smidge, so much for that training. And yet, the enemy had to regroup and make a second assault to take the Belle. Their tactics were the same. My swivel cannon sprayed shattered glass shards and drenched the enemy bateaux and swimmers. I wanted more flash than efficacy, each barrel working to sting a wider swath, though few of the wounds proved deadly. And still, the river ran crimson. The enemy finally reached my vessel in force. Let's go over to the next card flip here. And I got myself an Ace of Wands. Now, 50-50. Is it going to be, I roll a 2d8? Sure, why not roll 2d8? Even or odd? I can't roll 2d8. How about if I roll 1d8 to get an even or odd? Find out if it's inverted. And we want high, 5 to 8. And it is a 6, so it's not inverted. An ace on assault weight. Step up on a box and direct your men to secure the lower hatches. Success and break the morale of the enemy assault. Continue with the remainder of the boarding action. Regardless, going forward, the player automatically succeeds any banal result he generates. Wow, that is a nice twist, because it allows me perhaps to stay in the battle and pick up some swaggering. But it's lordly. I am not of trade lordly, and it is a roll of a 7. I am not trade lordly. Roll of a 7. Here goes my 2 dice roll, and I subtract 1 from my dice from the previous one that I had. Thank you for keeping me honest. Here goes my 2 dice roll. A 9. I made the roll. So that ace allows me to win the battle. So Bushnik first was swallowed up by the wave assault, and then I stepped in and I trapped some of Gabriel's men who were attacking me. Maybe Flambeau had sent some sailors and some musketeers to attack as well, and we have broken the enemy morale and assault, and we have won this day. The bait was taken. Only experienced seamen should cross ships. The enemy wrangled their way aboard and proceeded to hunt. A squad ripped apart the forecastle. More still turned over my cabin as the majority scoured the lower deck. Was it me they hunted for, or simply anyone to duel? The attackers lost all order. Besides a few bellowing sergeants, the majors remained back at their supply train, sipping sherry. The horsemen were told of our atrocities, hell-bent on revenge. Some baubles of loot, strategically placed in lock boxes below, the enemy suspected they had won. They moved with passion, only to be trapped. These were cavalry and some river gondoliers, not true mariners. A proper attack would have cleared the port gunwale before any attempt was made to go to berth. The sails, too, were hardly inspected. My men moved from both places. From our concealment, anyone out on deck was quickly bludgeoned or silently spitted on cutlass. We set about securing the hatches, locking and barring the doors, wiring shut the passages, and caging nearly 300. Then what? Muffled threats, they scolded us, commanded us to fight like gentlemen. Fists pounded wood, thrusted shoulders struck iron-edged frames. I lit a smear of pitch. With a departing wave, my sailors were off and joining the Marines ashore. I stayed long enough to hear the first cries and then the shrieks of terror as the entire ship engulfed in flames. A smell of bacon. Interesting. Bye, Belle, you were a good vessel. And from what I recall, it's a mess. It's probably not going to be a boat that Adam Adam is going to need anymore. What happens when we win a battle? We win a battle. We check ignobles. Go over to Henri. I got him right here. Close, thank you. And I have personal risk and audacity, fame, notoriety. Now, I could probably take either of them. Now, which one do you think I should take? Probably the personal risk and audacity would seem like it's the one that I would most likely want right now. Let me grab my freehand tool. And let me check my personal risk and audacity for trying to save Bushnick and winning the battle. Oh, gull, old dolt, ignorant as dirt. What? Did the elite soldiers think that once the flame hit the river, the fire would snuff out? Horsemen should never fight on water. Any exposed stragglers were felled by sharpshooters. We took back the gun platform, nearly left unguarded by the enemy. We secured the far shore and took the command tents. More hostages to sell in Saxony. To the final cries of our enemy on the Belle, entombed and burning, should I confess the delight I felt? And go back to map tokens and select a move, and let's move on to the next card flip. And we got ourselves a 5. That 5 is going to be in phase. Now, a 5 in phase, we can read that. I go back to my omnibus here. Fives represent an opposition to the opposition or allies coming forward. In phase B, the players may treat this card, regardless of inversion, as either a knight or a queen. And yeah, I forgot to do that. I have to roll to see if it's inverted. As a knight, they gain extra agents or soldiers. As a queen, the patron provides them with information. So let's roll that. Do we still have it? A D8? 2D8. 1D8. I roll 1D8. And I rolled high, 5 to 6, so it's not going to be inverted. So I can take it as a queen, or I can take it as a knight. Now, a knight is interesting because I could increase my number of Marines aboard. So this could be, for instance, that my patron, Baron Leo, or I could recruit some of the men from Das Kappes, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and take 4d8, a huge amount, 4d8 of men-at-arms musketeers, 20. I added another 20 musketeers to my unit, provided by agents of Das Kappes in reward for me completing that objective and getting that wool there. The bodies must have floated back to Saxony as a calling card. Das Kappes sent a contingency of trained Marines, a gift perhaps of a useful kind. Was the good wife concerned for my safety? I had plans to soon head cross-land in my pursuit. There was a letter from Karl Schultz saying that the woman of my search may not be whom she seems to be. Cryptic. I accepted the paid mercenaries into my company. Most were rogues and knew my growing reputation. I was a leader who would not frown upon a lad taking something expedient as booty. For now, I was not concerned with personal loyalty. They could fight for gold. Fine by me. Better the devil you know. Also, I won that last battle, and I collected 250 times a D8. Give me a D8 roll. A D8 roll? It's 2D8. How do you roll single D8? There it is, 6. That's 1,500 doubloons. 1,500 doubloons is a lot of money. That could maybe outfit gun platform in Saxony. Or I can pocket that 1,500 to make sure that I distribute it to my men. That probably would give me a little bit of a bonus. Let me see if I can make a rabble-rouser roll of a 7 on 2 dice to give me... Is it a 7? I'm still level 3, yes. And 2 dice roll of 13, so I made my rabble-rouser row. I'm going to take away all of the agents aboard and turn them into loyalists after that. I'm going to distribute that money that I collected on that last battle from attacking Lord High Mayor Flambeau. And as you can hear from the narratives, I'll flesh that out as time goes on. All told, 1,500 double dunes, a good haul. Horses, coats, wine, saddles and brands, distinctive colors, maker's marks on the bottle. expect Escapus would see that plunder and send it east away from the suspicious property clerks of the nearby west. My share was large, but my purse was already brimming. Instead, I let each man, including the newly joined, gain more of what he craved. Some of the men bought uniforms, and Ushnik started calling the company the Werewolves, a strange term which became even stranger translated. I felt something nautical was more apropos, but I deferred. There's already too much to manage to be fussy over a moniker. A wolf emblem was hand-painted by each recruit. Some were very fine, others looked little more than smears of black ink on what was once a tidy and pressed padded wool jerkin. I was glad they chose to splurge on an outfit. A dry mercenary in a warm shirt was probably stronger than any bare-chested brigand, regardless of the sheen on his freshly forged sword. Any piece of sandstone would hone a blade. I was presented with my own white shirt by the crew. It was mockery, but I saluted thanks. Each man dipped his thumb and smudged a dot to create a collective drawing. If you squinted just right, held the result at an angle near sunset, it could be construed as a dog. When I pointed out what I thought was an ear, Ushnik chuckled and said that was its jaw. At least it wasn't the animal's cock. And the next card flip will be 5. We also play with the double knave, double knight, double queen, or double king roll. It's essentially double face card rolls. In any phase, we can advance the phase with the 10, with the sun card, with certain results within the body. When you have, like, for instance, a 3 in phase A will allow the phase to advance, but we're still in phase B. And here comes my next clip of the card. And it is a death card. Now, what is the death card? We can read that. Both. The death card. Until the phase advances or the deck reshuffles, all mission in consequence encounters will tend to have unfavorable or violent results. Ref may prompt combat with people that normally would not be opposed. Doesn't sound like a good card. I could roll that die again, that single die. And 2, it's low, so it's inverted as well, but it's not going to change the result of the card for encounters here. We retreated downstream and sheltered in a tributary south of Saxony, waiting out some weather and possible reprisal. There were wanted posters, but no reward offered, and these could have been delayed copies of the mayor's previous arrest attempt. The image looked more like Ushnik, which my Russian first mate saw as a notorious honor more than I would. Fame will get you killed. Over the week delay, I called upon good wife Hannah. She was busy on industrial chores, and I tagged along, watching the weavers turn dyed yarn into fabric. Seemed a pleasant enough task if you could stay sober. Carl Schultz was stern and demanding, but her salaries were above the local standards. Each time I asked about her husband, she would offer vague explanation of off on Holy Crusade, employment in Ansbach, or an exploration on some faraway commission. I had heard of Timbuktu, but I always believed it was a mere fable. Apparently there was such a place. Hannah once lived there as a colonist. That was years ago, a different life, she would sigh. Her husband was probably dead, long ago being lost. We eventually consummated with little passion after an evening of placid conversation and multi-course dining. Her maid seemed to know what was ahead and left before dessert. The woman seduced all her agents. I guess I was one of them now. I surprised myself thereafter by feeling panged. I was hunting for Josephine with immodest intentions galore. Biblical monogamy seemed unobtainable, yet Hannah Carl Schultz was not a paid tryst, a mere transaction done with indulgent manly pardon. This was an affair, if not to remember. I fell into deeper guilt. I even missed Carl Schultz's quip as she inquired how my whopper judged the fit of her Davy Jones locker. On guard. I need to keep all these on the desktop in case I get the ability to pick a card from the discard pile. And here comes the next card flip of the events. And it's going to be a 5, second 5 in phase. Now, what's nice about this is I can take another knight card from that 5, and by having 2 knights, I can advance the phase to phase C, which is terrific. So I'm going to advance the phase to phase C, but I'm also going to have a second knight card. So I have distributed that money in Saxony, and in fact, I probably will use the gun platform The boat is going to continue on down to Mainz and perhaps pull away some of Gabriel's men and Flambeau. And I'm going to go across on land because I have word that Josephine was lost in Montpellier Valley. So we leave the gun platform to continue on as a distraction. And then night will represent the fact that another crew will come aboard, probably some Germans from the Confederation of Bavaria, dispatched from Das Kappes, will take the boat down, and they're going to take it past Mainz all the way to Vienna and hopefully draw off the opposition. Now, originally when I flipped the cards, it said for the mission, it said that Gabriel's commitment as the rival was very limited, and this will also justify how that card came to be. A lot of times when you have the initial mission, you're going to scratch your head and go, what? Well, how do I make that happen? Just let it happen organically with the card flips, or let your players make suggestions. In fact, what they'll do is they'll remind you, hey, we're supposed to get that benefit sometime. And I'm going to go from Saxony into Montpellier. I am no longer on river barges as events, and I'm going to move into Warzone Phase B? No, Phase C. I'm going to move into Warzones Phase C as I move right over here. And I'm going to move into Montpellier Valley as this gun platform acts as a decoy going down. There was no more river left to travel. Anywhere further south would lengthen the hunt. I confided with Uznik and Hanna Karl Schultz. We needed to enter Montpellier and follow a rumor. I told Uznik to meet me later, but he stated emphatically he was my Marine now, and he was. Karl Schultz suggested the plan to send the gunboat further down the Rhine. Surrogates could finish the route with much ballyhoo. I wanted to take all the guns, but that was impractical. The roads in spring were mud. We would drag a few smaller carriages, little more. We would not be horsed, not fully, but we would be fleet. Nearly 80 strong with fresh recruits, well armed and rather skilled by regular drilling. The strife in the valley of Montpellier offered cruel men opportunity, even as we pursued a more gallant goal of finding Leo's daughter. She was seen in the company of Walter Morvan. Figured we were playing checkers, not chess. My friend from youth was enviable in his abilities to find lost souls. We needed to intercept Morvan before he returned to Nantes. Was that even possible? That depends on Josephine, my Lady Jade. If she was a willing traveler, they would be there by coach long before my men could muster. We would bank on the opposite, that she knew she was a captive and, at the very least, stalled with whatever reason she found possible, perhaps using her feminine wiles. I flattered myself that she didn't want to marry the pig-faced Flambeau. Part of the information related by Das Kappes was the path of travel seemed indulgent, erratic. Morvan must be negotiating his finder's fee. Best of luck to him, and for me. Regardless, we could steal her away from Gottrop if that was our final fate. We packed for good order and set out at a forced overnight march, taking turns wheeling what we retained in the way of swivel guns. We could sleep every third day, provided there was evidence we were shrinking the distance between. I lamented with Uznik as we started. Was he sure he didn't want to pilot the guns further downstream? Those cannons we abandoned were rather valuable. Das Kappes knew that too. More to steal than those in God's green lands. Uznik was right, as our drummer began his cadence. Maybe with 100 horses we would be dragoons. I could begin to teach my soldiers how to ride. That is, after I fully learned how to myself. More later.